contar con una de nuestras más nuevas amigas en el último tiempo, Jane Mote de Whickers. Jane Mote trabaja en este espacio de apoyo al financiamiento de películas documentales para operaprimistas y gente que tenga nuevos proyectos. Ella nos va a contar un poco más. Han apoyado varias películas bastante interesantes del mundo documental, que han ganado distintos premios a nivel internacional y han sido seleccionados también en importantes festivales. Nos van a contar mucho más detalles sobre el tipo de películas que ellos financian, que están apoyando. También hay otras noticias acerca de bastante experiencia en el último tiempo a nivel internacional y que nos va a permitir también conocer mucho más sobre The Whickers y la relación que puede tener o que ha tenido con Latinoamérica, que esperamos hoy día se esté acercando mucho más. Así que por favor pónganse cómodos, muchas gracias por participar, esperamos que puedan disfrutar de las palabras que nos entreguen nuestras compañeras, y también recordarles que el streaming está haciendo por Facebook y por YouTube, y los que necesiten traducción simultánea con la que estamos contando pueden ingresar también al webinar, donde hay traducción simultánea del inglés al español, y también contamos con las chicas Paulinas, ambas dos que nos están apoyando con lenguaje de señas chileno en el panel de hoy día. Así que nada, invitadas a todos a participar con sus preguntas también a través de Facebook, y si están en el webinar a través del chat. Así que María José, Jane, welcome, bienvenido, muchas gracias. Y nada,
muchas gracias, Diego.
Para la conversación.
Muchas gracias. Hola a todas y todos y bienvenidos a esta conversación con The Whickers. So Jane, I'm so happy to see you. I'm so happy to be here talking to you. And we would love to hear about The Whickers. What do you do? How do you support and finance international documentaries? And to get into the zone, I would like to ask you, what is The Whickers and what do you do? What's the origin? What do you do?
Oh, well, it's fantastic to be with you. Thank you very much for the welcome. And I know Diego, I've seen, and others from your organization around the world talking about fantastic projects in Chile and in Latin America as well. And we really want to find those great first-time directors. So I'm going to talk for a minute, if I can, just through a presentation which shows the basics of what the Whickers is about. And I'm sure you'll want to ask me lots and lots of detailed questions.
I will. Yes, I will.
Yes, I'm ready.
So get ready. I'm very good at questions. And also, I want to tell the audience that I'm reading the chat in here. So if you have any question, you can do the questions and I will ask to Jane all the questions that our first filmmakers from Chile and Latin America have for you.
Fantastic. So if it's possible for us to show the presentation, we can just get that up on screen, hopefully.
Okay.
Lovely, thank you. It's just coming now, if you bear with us. So you can see that that's the Whickers there. If we can go full screen, that would be fantastic on slideshow. But if not,
¿Se puede pantalla completa? ¿Es posible?
That's great. Thank you very much.
There you go.
So the man that you see in the middle, some of you will recognize. I'm of the generation where I will, so obviously that's Muhammad Ali, but that is Alan Whicker with the glasses. And if we can go and look at Alan on the next slide, he was an icon of British broadcasting. So when I grew up, Alan Whicker's documentaries were on family time, Saturday night television on the main channels, when documentary was at the heart of what the world watched. And for them, the truth was far more exciting than fiction, because there were so many stories that Alan brought to the screen that nobody had heard of before. And when he died, he left a sum of money to help with the next generation of documentary makers. So he wanted to inspire others to do the fantastic job that he'd enjoyed doing all his life. And that's what the fund is. So if we could play the show reel, which is the next video, then you will get a sense of what the Whickers does and a little bit about him.
Okay, that's great. I want to see.
This is Britain, where those who describe themselves as fond of animals
How about world events and that sort of thing? Do you keep yourselves informed?
Not very much, no.
There's no doubt about it, Mr. President. You have had the worst international press of any president I've known.
I want to start by telling you a little bit about cryonics.
Very well done. Watch this space.
And a runner-up every year. And we also have been doing a few bursary funds with Chicken and Egg and with Doc Edge in Calcutta, because we found some areas where people needed a bit more development. So you'll have to do your maths on that. If we go back to the presentation, if that's possible, I'll just show you some more facts before we get into our discussion.
Okay.
We'll just see if that works. It's so funny not
Yes.
driving it myself, you know, so thank you very much. If we can just go to the next slide after Alan, that's fantastic. And again, the next one. So the main award that we have, this is in pounds, so £80,000 is the top prize, which is, I think, the biggest single fund for a documentary maker. And that is $100,000 and $15,000 as a development fund to the runner-up. And we're looking for first-time feature-length directors of 50 minutes duration or more. I'm not going to play the videos for the next one because it stops and starts it, but let's just go through the slides if that's all right. So we can show you this later if we have time, but Pai Lin, who's featured here, who also has been promoting things. If we go to the next slide, she won in 2017 with Hope Frozen, and Hope Frozen has actually just come onto Netflix, and it's about cryogenics. So it was a Thai scientist and his wife, and their young daughter died, and they decided to see whether they could freeze her body or her brain, actually, to see whether she could live in another life. And it's the story of their quest to try to do this, and what the ethics were, and what the society thought of that. And it's done very, very well. And then this year's winner was Nian Deng. Akwel de Mobir is making the film, and it's our first African winner. So obviously Pai Lin was from Thailand, and Akwal is Sudanese, and this project is actually about her mother, who has become one of the vice presidents of Sudan, and she has extraordinary access to her. So that's been really an interesting project. And if we just finish with the slides, the next one gives you a little bit of our criteria. So we say director-led. We expect we want the film to feel like only that director could make it. In the same way that you saw Alan Wicker, it has to have a stamp of that person. We want them to really be heart and soul. They don't have to be on screen, but you have to get a sense that it is that person. We want them to be really engaged with the subject and to have unique access. So a story that nobody else could get. It's their story. We like directors.
And not personal stories.
No, not at all. I mean, sometimes they might be, but no, The Hope Frozen wasn't a personal story, and many of them aren't. Mirror, Mirror, that we did about, that Sasha made about Chinese plastic surgeon who is doing Facebook Live throughout his surgery. It's about him. Or We Were Kings, which was our first winner, which was about the past king of Burma, now Myanmar. No, they're not all personal, but the person telling it has unique access. So they've managed to get the confidence of somebody, and they've got exclusive, unique access, so they can get inside a story. Really, is the most important thing. And we like people to have curiosity and be a bit playful about how they tell the story. So they can be personal about how they want to tell the story, but they must not be partisan. So they can't be, they have to stay objective. They can't be saying that, campaigning or something like that. That doesn't play very well with us. And then the last slide, I think, I haven't got it in front of me. If we can just show the last one.
Like more journalistic point of view, is it? Or
yes, I mean, some of our stories, the Amanda Mustard Project is a personal story, but there is a sense of storytelling that has a bit of journalism in it. Yes, I think it's important. Stylistically, people can take that any which way they want, but there has to be some sense of learning something new, I think. Yes, I think that's important, but it's not current affairs. And I think, yes, it's not a personal mission in the sense that, it's them somebody trying to change the world themselves. It's more about looking at how other people are trying to do things instead. So our applications are open, and when we're due to close the applications soon, and then the projects are shortlisted, and then we take the 5 finalists come to Sheffield Documentary Festival in June, and we announce the winner at that point.
During Sheffield, you announce
During
winner.
Sheffield, correct, yes.
Is it just one winner, or 3 winners, or 5 winners?
It's the one winner for the big prize, and then the development fund winner as well, yes. And I think that's the end of the presentation. Yes, it is. So that obviously people can contact me. They've got the name. So it's probably easier if we talk together than worry about
yeah.
Yeah.
So do you need to have any connection with the UK to apply to this fund, or is this just for any worldwide filmmaker who?
Yes.
What are the characteristics of the project to apply to the Whickers?
Okay. Yes, a good question. I think because I have this English accent and our founder was very English, that a lot of people think that you have to be connected to the UK, and it's completely not so. We invite applications from anywhere in the world that have no connections to the UK whatsoever, and most of our winners have no connection to the UK, because it's wherever the best stories are. And we really want authentic voices. And I think to get good access to a story, you've often got to be local. you've got to be local to where the story is. You know, you've got to be able to get underneath the story. So we're really excited to try to get a LATAM project in that winning seat, because we haven't had that yet. But we're only 5 years
We
old.
hope so too. We hope so too.
Good.
And how interested are you in Latin America? Have you ever funded a Latin American project before?
No, not yet, which makes us very interested. And last year was the first time we funded an African project. So obviously the world is a very busy place. We've had a few projects from Latin America in our long list, but we haven't had any yet really in the short list. We've funded a lot from or had a lot of interest from Asia and Southeast Asia, from Europe. I mean, we've had applications from almost everywhere in the world. But, you know, it's all about the time in the project as well. So it's not just the nature of the project, it's where it is in development that affects the outcome. So we need a project that is in late development, early production. And sometimes people have a great story, but they've almost finished it. And we're not a post-production fund.
But what's the best stage of a project to apply to the Whickers? Do you need to have any funding before, or have the funding from your country, or maybe you can apply without having anything?
Yes. I mean, there are very few funds which say it's okay not to have any money and it's okay not to have any experience.
Oh, really?
Because we're first timers. I mean, obviously you have to have enough experience to convince us. And I suppose you convince often by showing some footage. So we do like to see up to 6 minutes of footage. And now that can be quite raw, or it can be a trailer and maybe an interview clip or something that you like to show. We understand it's not polished at that stage, but it helps people to understand a project, to see the footage. So that's important. We call it late development, early production. So I think some people interpret that differently, but I think really to be able to give us a sense of what you would do if you got £80,000 or $100,000, you need to have done quite a lot of research to be able to answer that question. You need to be able to describe what you think the project will be and show us, make us understand why we know you can deliver it. So you need to at least have got to that stage. And some people have started production when they apply, but what we then say is make sure there's still a lot to do, because we want our money to make the difference of whether the project happens or not. And if by June you've sort of finished it, you've got nothing to talk about. We want to be working with you on it. We don't want to let the project just go.
And how the Whickers work with the creators and the filmmakers? Do you follow up the projects? Do you give company to the projects? What's the program works?
Yes, we see anybody who gets through to our 5 shortlisted projects as being part of our gang. So we stay in touch.
Okay.
We help people. We connect them to the right people. Our judges are very good. We have somebody from BBC Storyville, from Dogwoof, the distributor. We have a Netflix represented, and Sheffield Documentary Festival, and Gary Kam, who's a fantastic producer from South Korea. And we all care about documentary, and we care about people succeeding. So we will stay in touch and we help people, even if they don't get through to the final 2. And then the ones that do, we help, hands-on if we're needed. We make sure that they're comfortable with the way that their exec producer or their producers are working with them. We work in partnership to make sure that the best product comes out at the end, and also that it gets the best chance of being seen everywhere in the world.
So you support not just only good stories, you also support good creators, good filmmakers. Are you looking for someone specifically? Are you looking for what kind of artists do you like to support?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think you've really understood the fund, because I should have said, and I hadn't done, that the fund is not just supporting stories. More than that, we're supporting directors. We want to get the next generation of directors out there. And for us, that's really important. So we're looking for directors who are curious, who are, quirky, different, passionate, hardworking, who really love to tell a good story. This is important. And it can be at any age. So maybe somebody's been a producer all their life and they want to make their first director-led program. Then they can do it. So there's no age limit. Sometimes people might have made a fiction and stayed in fiction and they want to make their first documentary. That's fine. We want to get people into documentary. We believe in documentary and we want to support the person as much as the project. So that makes us very excited.
And every year, how many projects do you get that apply to the fund? How many do you finance?
Yes, well, we get between 100 and 200 projects, depending on the year.
That's a lot, so it's very
probably
competitive.
Nearest to about 150, but some of those will not have read the criteria, so they'll go quickly. And then we always have a difficult choice. And what we do is we do a long list, and then everyone on that long list of about 12 to 14 will have a conversation with us. And many of those will end up, we will help some of those to get somewhere, even if they don't get through to us. So it's difficult, and there's a certain something we're looking for. We can never quite describe it. Our projects are so varied, and if you go onto our website, you'll see all the past winners, and they're very different. And it's often because the person is very different as well. So.
And why are you interested in Latin America right now? What kind of projects from Latin America you would like to have in your long list, or, of course, hopefully in your short list? Is some specific themes or topics, or
no? Do you know what
ways to make
documentary? I think one of the things that a lot of funds do is set up, and commissioners as well are terrible at it. They always say, "I'm looking for this for my slot," or "I want this sort of thing," and unusually we actually don't have any preconception of what we want. We just want stories that anybody would want to hear. So have a universality, are character-led, are intriguing, that draw you in. I suppose the stories that we're probably less interested is if there's too much history, because it's hard to make it relevant to today. So I think if it has a historical perspective, we should understand why we want to watch it today. What's the relevancy to today? But we want the stories that people are going to talk about, we're all humans. We all love to know that something that someone else doesn't know. So, and things that we haven't seen, or a place we haven't seen, or, a country that we haven't seen, or an element of a country we haven't seen. So, you have some of the most beautiful landscape and beautiful people and gorgeous language and everything. And we would love that to come alive on the screen. So, I have seen many projects from the region, and I can see that, there's a lot of talent and there's a lot of beautiful visual work going on. And then it's just finding, you've got the backdrop. What's the story? What's the character that's going to lift that? But we have no.
What is more important? What is more important for the Whickers? The visuals or the story itself? Or
the
both?
Story.
I don't know.
The story comes first. The story has to come first, and the cleverness of the storyteller, because a really clever storyteller can do a lot with a little. They can make a story out of very, very small resource in terms of visuals if they have to, but it intrigues you and brings you in. But of course, it's even more exciting if somebody can be playful with the medium and do things differently, because we talked about Alan Wicker at the beginning, and he changed a lot of the way that things were done on documentary. I've watched a shot of his that went on, a continuous shot for minutes, And, you know, it was on television and you just think that's never been done before. And it wasn't done to be clever. It was done because it had a point to it. But it was astonishing at the time, and it's astonishing even now to realise that he was able to do that. And I think some element of surprise is always good if it's done in a good way.
And what about we have been a year being in a pandemic situation.
Yes.
So how COVID has affected the funding that you were giving to the creators and the artists? Does COVID affect?
No, because our fund is protected because it's a foundation. We have the same funding, thankfully, but we know that documentary makers are having a difficult time. We do an annual cost of docs survey where we measure how documentary makers are finding it, you know, how they find their funds. And too many documentary makers are having to self-fund, and the last thing they pay is for themselves. And, you know, this makes the industry very inaccessible to a lot of people. It means that a lot of storytellers are only the wealthiest people who can afford to do that. And that's not right, which is why we're very keen to reach out to anybody who has, you know, the ability to tell a story, because that's not fair either. And we recognise with COVID as well that productions are going to be affected. People are going to have harder time to get their story told. So we'll be a little bit more relaxed about when we expect the film to be delivered, because we expect that there will be obstacles along the way as well.
And how do you think this year has been working for the industry, the documentary industry, in all these markets, in these online markets? How has it? How have you done your work in this pandemic situation? Is it different? Is it better? Is it worse? What do you think about that?
Well, obviously we miss the personal contact. You know, we miss when Sheffield happened last year, we weren't able to bring all of our finalists together to meet each other, but they still created bonds online. And I've been at all of the big events really all through the year, many documentary festivals. And what I have loved is the way that this industry is so creative, has risen to the challenge. And also, I think there's been a level of the playing field by allowing people to contribute online and to be able to stay where they live and to show us where they live on film with their pictures, and to not have to pay to come to festivals and to self-finance a lot of their time at a festival. They might get paid to come, but then they still have to pay for their time. And I think actually it's given us a chance to have more voices heard in the industry. I don't want this to go on forever because I love meeting people, but I think the industry has proven to be very strong and robust in this time. And I'm very proud of the way that people in the documentary world have risen to the challenges.
And how do you think the creators have to adapt? What are the things that they have to change to produce during this 2021?
Well,
because
yeah, flexibility is everything, isn't it? You know,
one day things are in one way, and then the next day everything changes, like borders close. So,
and you know, I'm making a documentary myself, and it's very frustrating. You get to know a character, and the character's isolated. You can't get to see them, so you have to be creative about how you get round that and keep repositioning the story. That's all you can do. The other thing is that people who are pitching have become very creative. You know, I've seen some amazing films by people where they've really used their environment to show what their skills are, and there's the opportunity if you're pitching not live but on film to really show off an extra bit of your filmmaking skills. So I think that's quite an opportunity for some people who don't like to be live, because you know, pitching live is very stressful, especially when you know that that's going to be like you're down to 5 people and only one of you is going to get $100,000 that night. That's quite scary.
It's very scary because you are in a very big table. I have never done it before, but as
Yes, you've seen it, yes.
Yeah, and it's a very big table full of people. And the change with COVID is that you are alone in your house, in the comfortable in your living room, doing your pitch.
Yeah, exactly.
So that could be a good thing.
I think so. And also, I think if people are doing things online, they need to still keep their personality about them. So I suppose don't afraid to be afraid to be a bit playful. You know, you could just, there was one, I think it was hot docs, and we were in a waiting room for the next meetings. And there were a lot of decision makers, big decision makers from around the world. And this guy just looked around the faces on Zoom and he thought, right, okay. So he just suddenly said, hey guys, you know, if you want to fill in some time, my project is about this, to that, the other. And some people were like, but I thought he was great. I mean, good on him, you know. He took
taking any opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. So be cheeky, it's good.
And do you think COVID will influence the new narratives, the future narratives of the creators all around the world?
I think it has to, and I don't think it has to in a literal sense where, you know, it's about people worrying about pandemic or whatever. I think COVID has created a moment of pausing in the world, and it's made us all stop and think about what really matters in life, what we're doing to our planet, whether we're listening to the indigenous people who really understand things when other people may not have, whether we've got the balance right. And I think all good documentary makers are inspired by asking questions. You know, they're people who ask questions, and I think this is a time to be asking those questions, and there's an opportunity here to find new truths and to look in different places for stories. And I think that's something we will really benefit from at the Whickers, because we want to go to those new places.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's beautiful. This is a question that I have for you that is more like you as a consultant, more than a Whickers representative. It's about development and what are the most important aspects for creators who start working on a project idea? Like, what would you recommend to our audience that I'm sure that it's full
the
of?
obvious one, I'm sure many people do this, that, you know, the instinct is to just get started as quickly as possible. And we all know, you know, it costs a lot of money to film, so it's not a great idea to go in without being really planned. But the other thing is that if you can live with the ideas and stories for a bit longer and do more research and more development and afford yourself time where you're not under pressure to deliver on a story, then you'll get better results. And I know there's always the fear you're going to miss something out. You can always do research filming with a smaller camera, but just spend time on subjects. And the other thing is to find people that you can bounce ideas off, so that you early in a project, you don't assume that you know that you're going to get the right angle on something, that you can you have good friends, you know, that are in the industry, people that you trust, that you can just say, can you just have a look at this? Is this the right way to be going? But, you know, the most important thing is your gut. You're going to spend a lot of time making a documentary. It's a large part of people's lives. So really, you need to know in your gut that it's something you want to do. Don't feel you're doing it because it's, you know, somebody else's good idea. I think that's why it's important documentaries are driven by the people making them, because, you know, you have to want to be with that subject for a long time, because unfortunately it takes a long time to get a documentary to happen, unless you're very lucky.
Yeah. And also find, I don't know, maybe, but find a good team partners, because, yeah, you are going to be like a long time with them.
Yes.
So try to get your friends on board, or make friendship, build a friendship with your team.
Yes, and I think also that's right. You need to have that team. And if you're going for international exposure and you want your project to be seen internationally, and you're not sure, you know, if it's going to fit or whatever, it is good to go to some of these festivals, to go to the panels and so on, and think which commissioners or decision makers sound like the sort of person I could talk to, and try and have those conversations and stay in touch with them. People are very generous in the documentary world. They will help you. And having somebody in another part of the world who can just answer your questions when you're not sure, and throw you a line does help. And at Whickers we do a lot of that. I mean, that's what we spend a lot of our lives doing, and we don't mind at all, because we're lucky enough to have got where we've got in our careers. It's time for other people now, and finding those people is not difficult. I know from every conference and every event I go to, there are so many decision makers who are generous spirited. So find those generous spirits and lean on them a little bit, and it's fine. They won't mind.
Yeah, like it's what I have seen this last year as a producer. Like people are very friendly, and do you why is that? Like, is it why?
I think, because documentary is not a commercial business. Documentary doesn't make much money. I mean, I've worked in television, and I know in television, documentaries, if you're talking series and so on, that can make money, and then you've got your rights, and you tend to get funded 100%, or not 100% these days, but in the old days by television. But this sort of documentary, the featured documentary, the character-led, this is very, very difficult. It's like writing your first novel or writing novels. Very few people make much money about it, You do it because actually you really want these stories to be told, and you want people to understand the world differently and to see things differently, or you just want to express yourself. So nobody is in it for the money. You can't be. So money is a corrupter, right? And there isn't much corruption in the documentary world because there isn't a lot of money in it. So, I mean, I still think there's a lot of a way to go to make the funding more fair. And I have some worries, that funds might have too much power, including ourselves, so that's why we try to have an international panel on our jury and get lots of different people involved, because we shouldn't be from the perspective of one territory in the world, because no one part of the world has more rights over storytelling than another. So yeah, we're quite careful on that.
And where's the jury come from?
So it hasn't confirmed this year's jury, but hopefully it will be very similar. But we always have a filmmaker. So our current filmmaker is Gary Kam, who's from South Korea, whose short film In the Absence won an Oscar. So very, very good filmmaker, and he's a producer and a director. And we have Mandy Chang, who's an Australian, Chinese, now living in Britain, BBC commissioner, Kate from Netflix, Ollie Hartbootle from Dogwoof, and I'm myself.
So it's very all over the world, like different perspectives.
Exactly, and we'd like to keep it like that. I mean, if we have a moment, I've noticed we've still got a bit of time. We could play the Netflix trailer for Hope Frozen, if you'd like, to see what sort of film Pylin came up with. If we're happy technically to.
เนี่ยเหมือนกับเข้ามาเป็นจุดเชื่อมสำคัญในความสัมพันธ์ของครอบครัวหลายๆอย่าง
ไอเนี่ยเป็นมะเร็งสมองชนิดที่ร้ายแรงที่สุดในโลกคือการแพทย์ปัจจุบันยอมรับแล้วว่าเขาจะต้องจากไป
การทำไครโอนิกจึงเกิดขึ้นในหัวผมมีไอเดียเกี่ยวกับเรื่องไครโอนิกอยู่แล้ว
We're using cold as a way to maintain cellular viability. As future technologies develop, we may be able to come up with a cure for what they died of, or this may never work.
We're all like, what? แต่ที่สำคัญก็คือว่าผมยอมแพ้ไม่ได้
เพราะเขาต้องการที่อยากจะมอบโอกาสในการมีชีวิตในโอกาสหน้าให้กับลูกสาว
ใน ในครอบครัวของเรานี้เนี่ยเราให้ความสำคัญทางด้านวิทยาศาสตร์ค่อนข้างมาก
My biggest motivation is my sister.
The question, how close are we to bring her back? ผมมีความต่อสู้อยู่ในใจใช่มันอาจจะมีโอกาสอยู่
คืออะไรที่เกิดขึ้นกับลูกเนี่ยเราอยากที่จะรับไว้แทน
ผมไม่แคร์ว่าใครจะว่าเราเป็นคนที่ไม่รู้จักตัดใจและยึดติดอยู่กับตรงนี้ผมไม่แคร์เพราะว่าผมเป็นอย่างนั้นจริงๆผมตัดใจไม่ได้
Story because Pailin had been had this contact access to the family, and she really wanted to tell a story about Thailand that was different from the poverty, the trauma, all the way that the world looks at Thailand or the tourism or whatever. And here was a very well-educated scientist family, going through a tragedy, but had a really interesting view on how to deal with the tragedy. And she believed passionately in her story, but she had been to so many different documentary events and she never got anywhere with it. She pitched it, and she nearly gave up. And we were the last fund that she decided to apply for. And then when we were selecting, there was some views around the table that actually this wasn't going to work because we know the story. She's died. People won't want to spend their life in the cinema watching something where it's such a sadness in the film. And we had a lot of people thinking, no, this isn't going to work. So she nearly didn't get to the shortlist because the shortlisters were not convinced. And
what happened?
And then she came along and we train all of our finalists. We help them to pitch and we help them to develop their story because we want every story to have the best chance of winning. It's not like we're putting you on the spot. We're trying to help you. So we did that with her and the others, and Pailin just blossomed into the best storyteller on the day. She just sold it to people and they got what she wanted. And then she's gone on to make her film, and now she has a very good career as a documentary filmmaker, but she was really not sure if she would make it. And the film had a very good outing and now is on Netflix, and she's made a little promo to try and say to people, if you don't apply, you'll never know. so apply.
So, okay, so we invited everyone to apply, because if you don't get the fund, you at least are going to get some help or
Yes.
some push to bring your project to the next level, right?
That's right. And if you want feedback, if you don't get selected and you want feedback, just ask us, because we really want to help people. And also there are people who apply more than once, because they've taken the feedback and they've gone in and
is
they
it
want
possible to apply
as
twice?
long as you're still in the same stage, if your project hasn't progressed beyond early production, then you can, because sometimes people apply and they haven't really worked out enough. And, we have to know that if we give the money to them, it's going to work. So, yeah.
And you always give feedback for the projects?
We don't give feedback on, like, if we have 100 or 160 projects.
Okay.
We wouldn't necessarily on all of them, but not everybody asks. But we try and give feedback as much as we can. And all of the shortlisted ones will have a lot of conversation, the long list ones. And many of the projects we meet at different events around the world, so we're already in contact with them. But we really are accessible, so if you're filling in a form and you don't know something, you just ask us. We want to help you have the best chance.
Jane, we have a question here from the audience. It says it has to do with the audio and sound funding that you have. If
Great.
you can tell
thank
us
you for asking that.
Yes, we were forgetting.
Obviously, we keep forgetting to talk about it. There are not many people who fund audio. We haven't announced what our audio funding is this year, but we have always, since we started, Alan Whickers started in radio, and since we started, we've always had an audio fund. So it changes every year what we're doing, and we haven't even had the discussion yet on what we're going to be doing this year. But there's so many audio projects around the world, with podcasting becoming really popular too. And so we will always have some sort of funds available for audio, and we'll be announcing after the TV fund what the fund will be. Usually it comes out in August. And this year we also did workshops with some of the people who came in and got development funding from us for audio. And also we did development workshops with them. And again, you talk about COVID, we were able to do that, bringing people from around the world together to be in workshops together around audio documentary. And that's really exciting. So if anybody wants to find out, if they want to send us their details, we can just send them as soon as we know what the audio is, or just keep an eye on our website and our social media, because we always publish everything there. But yeah, audio is a fantastically important medium.
And the amounts of money are the same as the documentary?
No, it isn't. You haven't worked in radio. I've worked in radio, and
it's cheaper. It's cheaper.
It is a lot cheaper to do, and I love it, because you can really help people get inside people's heads with it. But no, the audio sums vary. In the past they've been £7,000 or 10,000 in our pot or whatever. But it's not, even £1,000 as a development in audio is a lot of money, because it does go further in audio. But yeah, and the training is really important, and the platform as well. So we're very keen to do that. So yeah, the amounts vary every year, but I think the most we've given away is 10,000.
Okay, but it's helpful anyways. So.
In audio world, if you knew your audio world, you'd think that was, wow, it's so much harder. It's wrong. We hope, that's why we'll never give up on audio. We don't want to give up on audio, because I think it will have its day again. And with podcasts, it is starting to. And I think it's a great way for newcomers to play with the
Yes.
I mean, I used to do radio documentaries, and it's great fun. And you can be very playful, and also it helps you to think about the audio when you're making television and when you're making film, because audio is a very important part of your project. And I think it helps you if you do some audio work first. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. It was Sarmiento Clavijo from Colombia. No, Amanda from Colombia.
Colombia. Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, fantastic.
So I have one more question before we get into the questions from the audience. If they have questions, you can do it here in the chat, or also in the Facebook chat and the YouTube chat as well. And the projects that you have financed, where are they right now?
Oh, that's a good question, isn't it? I'm trying to think of all the
if you can remember, like,
yes,
some of them, not all.
Yeah, I mean, some of them have been on PBS, so in the States, Mirror Mirror on the Wall, Sasha Sherbel, which was the plastic surgeon story I was telling you about, where he
the Chinese project, right?
Yeah, well, Sasha is German. It was filmed. He's based in Beijing, so the project was filmed in China and also in America, and it was shown on PBS. And he's just actually managed to get a contract for the project to be shown on Tencent, which is China's biggest on-demand service. So it's like the Netflix of China. So his project has just gone there. Other projects have been on different television platforms and also on Netflix, and also around the different festivals as well. So, and theatrical release. So we've had a variety, and we like to have a TV cut. So because Alan worked on television, but we understand that people might want to go on and make a feature length for theatrical release. And they may well need to get other funding for that. And we totally understand that as well.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Jane.
Thank you.
I'm looking if our audience have any questions from Facebook. I'm not connected to Facebook, so...
Oh, that's hard.
I'm trying to know if there are any other questions. And in this chat, I think, Jane, you are so good at talking, so I think our audience have no questions for you. Everything super well explained.
Oh, well, I hope so. But you know, if they're not...
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Do we have... what about the deadlines of the Whickers this year?
Is it the same? So,
is it the same as always?
Well, that's a good question. Funny you should ask that. So the deadline normally is the 31st of January. And I hope I'll be forgiven, but I can tell you exclusively today that we are going to extend that to the 7th of February. It's not been announced yet, so that is an exclusive for this event.
We feel so honored.
But you know what part of it was? I think it was yesterday, I was in some of the groups where we were meeting the new filmmakers, you know, the who's who, where we were, and I was so blown away by the amount of great projects and so many new directors at this event. And I know it takes a little while to fill a form in. So there is no excuse now. I've pushed the deadline back. So all of you who are...
You did it just for the Chileans?
I was inspired by the Chileans, yes. Because I felt that, you know, actually we want to make sure you get your projects in nice shape. And it gives you a chance to ask us questions and to get ready for filling the form in. It's not a difficult form. It's really probably one of the simplest ones. So yeah, there shouldn't be any difficulty with it. But if you do have any difficulty, let me know. And I think if I put my, I'm not the
please,
chat. But if I go to attendees, I can just put my email address as well. Because that's I'm talking and typing. You'd think I'd be used to that by now, wouldn't you? I just want to make sure I've spelt it right. There we go. So it's a very simple email address. So Emily, who is our production manager as well, hopefully she's listening in and she'll be helping us and helping you. So you might hear all from me, but we'll sort it out.
So okay. Jane Mote from the Whickers is inviting everyone from Chile and Latin America to apply this year to the Whickers. We have one more week, right?
You have 2 weeks now. You have 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, next week and the following week. And you have to be a first-time director, never have made more than 15 minutes before for a documentary. But you can work in documentary already. That's fine.
Is it possible to apply for less money than the £80 that you give, or
80,000?
80,000.
No, we only go for the big one. We only go for the big one.
Okay, that's very good.
Yeah, there is a 15,000 runner-up development fund, but we want to make the difference. We want to give birth to new stars. We want the star to be over Latin America.
Okay, we hope so too. Well, Jane, thank you so much for this conversation. It was
My pleasure.
lot of fun. And there is one more question from Mexico,
yes, I've just
and then we
seen it.
close. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
I just couldn't see it. Yeah.
It says, "Hi, I'm a filmmaker from Mexico. Applicant must have an executive producer on board to the time of applying. This should be somebody with extensive industry experience who can vouch for you.
Vouch for you. Yeah.
Vouch.
Yeah.
I only have a producer. Does that work?"
Yeah. I mean, okay, this does get people a bit confused. So I'm really grateful for you pulling this out of the application form. And I think we need to clarify that. So what it is you can imagine if we get you somebody who we've never heard of before, who can vouch for you. And if you've got a producer who people know in the world, great, that's fine. And the executive producer really becomes more of an issue when we get into the final shortlist, and we can help you with that. So as long as you've got a good producer on board who's somebody that will just say, yeah, this is somebody we know and we think they're a good person, that's fine. And then the executive producer will be a later stage, and it's usually something that we help with anyway. So we tend to get that stage is when we get into shortlist. So don't worry about that, don't worry. But a good question, because people do worry, because for some strange reason we seem to make it an issue. We won't make it an issue next year. I'm glad that makes it clear, Gabriel.
Gracias, Gabriel from Mexico. So, okay, well, thank you so much, Jane, for your time, for your words, for your support, and for this very positive way to see the industry and the new filmmakers from Latin America to apply and to get very empowering.
Yes,
with the
good
projects.
Well, thank you. You've been fantastic. You've asked such interesting questions, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you very much. Yes, very, very fun conversation. So, thank you to everybody that was here. Gracias a todos los que estuvieron viendo la conversación, este panel. Espero que disfruten lo que queda de CONECTA. Así que nos estamos viendo. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.